So I think we've got to let go of some of our anxiety about the future and realize that if we focus on our values and applying that decision today, whether it's in our business, in our family, it's in our life, the future's going to take care of itself.
On this episode of CLevel, I get to sit down with Shane Jackson, president of Jackson Healthcare. So Shane, I'm super excited to have you on today. I know we were trying to get together a couple of times, and then obviously COVID hit, and so we had to, reschedule, and just so everybody who's watching in the video, we are 6 feet apart. Absolutely. So even though we're not wearing our masks, but so Shane, I'm really big into people's backgrounds and how they got started, and I know you're the president of Jackson Healthcare, father and husband, and mentor of youth. But an actor?
Jumping right into acting.
Yeah.
I through high school and college, and then even kind of after that for a while, really as a musician and actor, and it's just always been such a great passion for me. And really, as we were talking a little while ago, the surge of content, movie content, everything's being produced here in Georgia where we are, really created the opportunity the last few years to be able to re-engage in that a little bit. Yeah. And so I've gotten to do, a small handful of feature-length films and, some other things that no one will ever see, and just love it. And now looking at dipping toe into production and writing and all of that, when things actually start getting produced again, I'll be able to do some of that.
Well, but I knew I liked it for a reason.
Yeah. I tell you though, it is as strange as it sounds. I think my background and passion for the arts has really been a huge benefit to me in my business career as well. Because understanding storytelling and understanding how people consume information, what moves them, what gives them understanding, what creates emotions, all that is, as a leader, is vitally important. Mm-hmm. And so I actually, as strange as it sounds, I think the acting and the arts and the music and all that part of my world actually really has benefited the business part.
It makes sense. I mean, because it's all about communication, right? Yeah. And the way that you're communicating with your people, if you have that acting background, right? So back in, the way actors are trained is you're telling a story, right? That's right. And when you're a public speaker, and I know you do some speaking too, so when you're addressing an audience and you have the inflection in your voice and you're engaging with your audience, that training actually does help you in the business world as well.
That's right. And just in general, the understanding that people retain stories, they don't retain information.
Yes.
Right. And so if you sit there and listen to a lecture and someone's just reciting historical facts, you're not going to remember that. But as I was talking to my 15-year-old son the other day about Band of Brothers, like that story sticks with me, right? And so it's just even understanding as a leader, as a spouse, as a whatever, how to communicate with people in a way that's going to resonate with them, that's going to move them, that's going to be memorable, and frankly, just the understanding that story is probably the best way you can do that.
Yeah. So on the topic of story, let's talk about Jackson Healthcare and the story behind Jackson Healthcare, and being in the top 3 medical staffing companies in the United States. What type of role does Jackson Healthcare play, and give me some of the background behind it?
Sure. So most people don't even realize that what we do is a thing, and it's been interesting over the whole pandemic, shelter in place, and all of this, as it's been much more in people's consciousness that, oh wow, like, do we have enough doctors and nurses to take care of all these patients?
Right.
Most people don't think about that all the time. And so getting to talk to people in the media and just people in different walks of life and explain to them the role that we play in making sure that patients, wherever they are, have access to care. And they're like, I didn't even know that existed. And so that's what we do. The purpose of our business is to make sure that we are able to have a patient, no matter where they are, get timely care. And we do that through a number of ways. The biggest thing we do is through healthcare staffing. And so we send doctors and nurses and therapists and pharmacists and you name it. If they're involved in taking care of a patient, we move them typically on a temporary basis to different areas of the country that have needs to see patients. We do it physically. We also do it virtually. Before everyone was doing virtual, we've been doing telemedicine for several years. We're one of the largest providers of telemedicine in the country. And then we do it through other technologies and things that make sure that patients are seen very efficiently. And so that's what we do. And I was talking to someone not too long ago about this, and they're like, okay, well, like, help me understand this. So you mean like a doctor works as a temp? I'm like, yeah, they do. Like, whoa, okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. But there's a big population of medical providers, doctors, nurses, that this is what they do. This is how they work. And they will go and work in one place for 3 months, and then they go somewhere else and work for a month and move around to make sure that patients are getting taken care of.
I mean, and we obviously have seen a huge spike in this with COVID and the need of critical care nurses and doctors and some of the hard hit areas. It blows my mind. How did you guys manage to put these people across multiple states? Like, what was your process with all that?
Well, so it's what we do. We work in all 50 states. And so we're normally every day, all day, this is what we do. And we're even used to working in these surge situations. It's been interesting over the last several weeks and months that I think people are learning about flu season from the standpoint of, like, most people don't know that like 50,000 people die from the flu every year. Hundreds of thousands of people are hospitalized from the flu every year. Like, it's never in the news. We're learning about it now because of everything going on. I know a lot about the flu season. We track it carefully because when there's a big flu outbreak somewhere, guess what happens? Hospital admissions go up, ICUs get filled, staff of nurses and doctors there get sick, and so we have to send in a bunch of nurses out. And so it's like, this is what we do. This is what we're used to. And we have relationships with and ongoing, our employees and people we contract with of thousands and thousands of doctors and nurses. And we have great relationships with literally thousands of healthcare providers around the country, these facilities. And it's just kind of this big puzzle, that we put together all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, like, you're on like speed dial, like when something happens and, they call you guys. Because, I mean, you see, there's the areas that got hit the hardest. Like, I remember, like, New York, was really, really searching for people. And I know a lot of people from Atlanta went up to New York.
Sure.
And it's just, you see a lot of that movement. It's a great service that you guys provide. And you're right, I don't think too many people think, when they see the doctor, it's like, oh yeah, I'm only here for a few weeks. Then traveling out. So we get like a lot of people, we get a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs and that watch the show. And during this time, during COVID, specifically in leading, a lot of questions are being asked. What are some insights that you have for leading people during a crisis like this?
As a leader, the last few weeks, months have been a crucible that has magnified everything that you have probably ever thought that you need to do as a leader. And it's been interesting to see as people come out and talk about this and kind of leadership experts and that sort of thing. And here's what you need to do. None of it's new. Right? It's not like all of a sudden that, okay, now that we're in a pandemic, here's what we need leaders to do. What it's done is put a huge focus and a much bigger emphasis on these core things that leaders need to do, and around communicating and transparency and vision setting and all those sort of things. We can talk about that. But I think what's changed is that we're in a place as individuals, much less as a society, where we're dealing with more societal uncertainty than really probably any of us in our lifetimes have had to deal with. I mean, we've been through the Great Recession and we've been through wars and all that sort of thing. I don't think anything that we've been through societally compares to the stress, pressure, and incredible levels of uncertainty that this has placed in our lives. And so anxiety is sky high. And so when you are in a position where you have such little visibility into the future, such uncertainty about what's going to happen, you're looking for answers. And I think a lot of what we're seeing around just even the response, the way that people are looking at what the government is doing, whether it's federal government or the state government, or how businesses are answering and all that sort of thing, is because there's this void, there's this hole, and there's this yearning that people have right now. And they're looking to leaders in any shape or form to provide some answers. And the problem is we don't have answers.
Right.
And so, as you think about as a leader what you need to do right now, one of the first things and one of the most important things I think you can do is not pretend that you have answers that you don't have. I was telling somebody this the other day that like most businesses right now, there's just, it's tough market. It's a tough economy. And so, when you're, horse racing, whatever, and you're behind, what's the jockey do? He starts whipping the horse. And so as a leader right now, it's tough. We don't know where the next quarter sales are going to come from, whatever. Our tendency is to start whipping that horse.
Right.
Well, guess what? The horses have been whipped like crazy right now. They're getting hit by everything. Yeah. It's not what they need. It's not what our people need. People don't need a commander to say, go take that hill. What they want right now is somebody who's going to jump in the foxhole with them.
Yes.
And then to say, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work out either, but what I'm telling you is I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And we're going to figure it out together. And by the way, all of the values, everything that we've ever brought to every decision we're going to make, we're going to keep doing it that way, and we're going to take, today, and then we're going to take tomorrow, and we're going to be in it together. And I think that kind of leadership approach right now, first of all, makes you real. It doesn't set you up as be a target of, well, you said this, and then that's not what happened. But the biggest thing is it attacks is isolation. I mean, we're dealing with all this uncertainty, all this stress, and we're forcing people to be literally isolated, not just emotionally isolated. Right. If I can be with you and help address that isolation, I'm still stressing all that, but at least I'm not alone. And that's where our leaders have got to be right now.
It's such a great point because, if you're the leader at a mountaintop pointing, hey, you got to go do this, as opposed to, let's lock arms.
Yeah.
Let's take this together. Getting down in the weeds with them as a leader is really, really important because there is uncertainty, and I've talked about this too with some of my employees, is that I don't have the answers, but we're going to go through this together. Yeah. We're going to get through it. I don't know how, but we're going to get through it, and we'll figure it out. And as obstacles come our way, we'll address that and then keep moving forward. And I think with that, when the leader comes down and works alongside their people, the workplace culture is strengthened. And so I think one of the really cool things, so it's not unknown that Jackson Healthcare has an amazing workplace culture. So what I would like to know from you is, how were you guys able to maintain that workplace culture when everybody had to go work remote, right?
Yeah.
And then most importantly, how did you maintain that when you opened your doors and everybody started coming back?
Sure. I think the amazing culture that we have carried through, Zoom and Teams and having everyone spread out. And I think had the benefit of so much just so many relationships, so much momentum, like, on our culture and it carried through. However, as this has gone from, 4 weeks to 8 weeks to 4 months, and now not knowing how long this is going to be, we're really having to think about right now, what is it that enabled us to have that culture, to build that, and then how do we sustain this, right? Because I think a lot of people experience that. I heard a lot of comments back in March, April, and May. They're like, "Oh, it's great. We're just so connected and all that." But I was actually talking to somebody, one of our leaders, about this the other day. We do, right, like a lot of companies, strategic planning in the fall. We do have a budget season. We go into a new year. We do strategic planning, and so we do these offsite strategic planning things. And we go and we get in a hotel for 3 or 4 days, and we're whiteboarding and all that sort of thing. And they're great. And there's a lot of things that happen in those sessions. The best thing that happens there is the dinners and the happy hours and all that happen afterwards, right? And it's not just because the company pays for the drinks that day. It's because it's all those side interactions and just that time where people get to be real with each other, and it's like, "Oh, hey, Chris, I want to talk to you about this," and that sort of thing. And we're looking at going into a planning season where we miss that. And I'm thinking about these relationships I have with so many of our people up here that have been just formed and strengthened and all that because of that personal interaction. And I've done we've done the Zoom happy hours and all that sort of thing. And it's kind of, cool at first, but I don't know about you. What I've seen is that those have started to kind of go away. Yeah. And because it's so hard to get that same, like, "Oh, let's go over here and have a beer and talk for a minute," right? You miss that kind of one-on-one when it's the group. And so, we're really looking at how do we allow our people to engage in a way that's safe, and healthy, but doesn't dismiss the importance of some of that interaction. And look, it's got a whole book on this. You can talk in the book. The culture of a company is based on the values and beliefs of that group, right? And so if you have a bunch of people that have similar values and beliefs, it means they approach decisions the same. They just think the same or whatever, and it creates this really kind of strong culture. But where those are discovered and learned and taught and all that, that's what we're trying to figure out right now, is how do we do this in a way that's healthy and safe and allows people that need to shelter in place, and but yet also allows us to either physically or virtually create those connections.
I mean, are you thinking like maybe creating settings where people can come together but still socially distance and having those types of events or something? I mean,
I think it's both. Look, there are people who either on medical necessity or just because of where they are psychologically right now, who either shouldn't or won't come out in public. And so we got to be sensitive to that. But I do also think that there's a way that we can safely allow people to get together and socially distanced and masked and whatever else we need to do to just get that energy. I had a meeting today. It was so fun. So we have this huge conference room here. We call it, it's like the UN. It's massive. It's got this huge table, and this table seats like 45 people. I think there was like 15 in this meeting. Like we were all spread out around it, whatever. And so I was going to this meeting, and I was just looking for the Teams thing, and they're like, "No, they're actually doing it in person." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And so I walked up the hill. There's the other building on our campus. I walked in, and there's like 14 other people in there, and I'm like, "This is so exciting," and we're like, every third seat, spread around and whatever. And I told them, I was like, "This is like literally, this is the most people I've been in a room with in months. Like, this is so cool." But we were talking about it. The energy is so different. It's just different than the Teams meeting, right? You can't do it. And so we got to look for opportunities to do that are healthy, but at the same time, also realizing that there are some limitations there. And I can't have the meeting with 45 people in that room. And so how do we do that? And so we're, even brainstorming on how do we, instead of having a bunch of people on a Teams call, How do we purposefully put people into positions where they're virtually connecting? One of my, as you walk around and see our campus, one of the things that we were really, really purposeful about, and from the first meeting I had with the architects to design this place, was I told them, I want you to focus on collision points, right? I want you to make some things purposefully inconvenient so that people have to go somewhere in order to do what they need to do, and so they'll run into other people, like collide with other people on the way.
Yeah.
Because there's just magic in that, right? And get people out of their routine, get people out, seeing people that they don't normally talk to, and then all of a sudden I'm talking to someone new and we get this idea.
Yeah.
And so we want to get people as much as we can safely have physical collision points. How do we do it virtually? Right? How do I simulate online connecting you with someone that normally you would never talk to, just in case maybe there's some magic in that interaction? And so it's tough to do. We're trying to figure out how to, because it's got to be a both and. It can't be an either or right now.
Yeah. A couple of points that you hit on it. There is definitely a different energy when you're with people. I remember the first time when we actually went back to the studio and we're like, man, I feel there's so much energy. I was like, I feel like I haven't seen you guys in years, And so, you've got that. And then also you mentioned about, there's some people that aren't, they just don't feel that it's safe enough. And I often wonder, when we get through this thing, because we're going to get through this thing, but when we get through this, even as the numbers start declining, how many people are still going to be up here, I can't go out, I can't do that? And I think that's what's going to prolong this thing longer than it actually, it may end, but it's that. And so I think there's going to be, some of that to where people have to start feeling safe. They have to understand, that if 300 people in Minnesota have it, it's not like, it's the end of the world. Like it's try to start making those steps to start connecting with people again. And there's going to be a time and place for that, but mentally people have to be ready to take that next step, to get out and start connecting again.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think as leaders, we've got to understand that we're going to have people on our teams that we're leading. They're going to be all across that spectrum, right? Yeah. And if you look at it, it's the bell curve, right? You got a few people, they're really, really frightened by this and won't go out, and then you got a few people on the other side that think it's a hoax and whatever, and then you have a lot of people that are somewhere on that spectrum in between. But I have a child who has compromised breathing, and so we were really going through a decision that a lot of people were facing of, do we send her back to school or not? And which sounds like, it's an easy decision. She has compromised breathing, like, you don't expose her to this, whatever. But as every parent can tell you, that's not the whole story. There's tremendous social factors we can consider for her. Again, so many people are in isolation, and especially for teenagers and that sort of thing, like what that does. There's just a lot to it. And we were really stressed about this. And my wife and I sitting and talking about what's the right thing to do here, or verbiage that we like to use, like what's the wise thing to do? Because there's no right answer.
Right.
But it just really got me thinking of how do you even consider answering some of these hard questions that we're all facing right now, and these really difficult decisions that we're having to consider when I don't know what's going to happen like next week, much less what's going to be the best thing that I'm going to be glad I did for my daughter 2 years or 5 years or 10 years from now, because I don't even know what that's going to look like.
Right.
I have so little insight into the future compared to what I typically have felt like. And we never really know what's going to happen in the future, but it's just the level of uncertainty feels huge. How do I even do that? How do I approach that decision personally, much less how do I approach that decision for my business and these thousands of people that I have the opportunity and responsibility of leading? And how do you do that? And I would just say, whether you are you're a business leader, whether you're in your family and relationships, whatever else, I would submit to you that you have always made decisions the same way. You have values, things that these principles that they have such great worth to you that when you act against them, like you just feel awful, right? But they're just, these principles they're important to you. They drive how you make a decision. You have beliefs on things that work, that don't work, things that are true, that are untrue. All those things in your life and your mind, they drive the decisions that you make. And I think the most important thing we can do right now is to be honest about what those are. What are those things that I hold dear that drive the decisions I make? And then ask for a question is, are those things trustworthy? Where I learn these values, does that look like something that is worthwhile given today's world? Like, is that a place I can trust to apply to making those decisions? And if that's the case, don't stress about what decision you're going to make. Because those values, those things that are driving your decisions, they're going to work for you regardless of how much foresight you have into the future. And so I think we've got to let go of some of our anxiety about the future and realize that if we focus on our values and applying that decision today, whether it's in our business, in our family, it's in our life, the future is going to take care of itself.
I love that. So staying true to your values, don't look in the future in fear, but look around in awareness.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way to say it. I like that. I'm going to use that.
Steal it from you. Go ahead. Yeah. Hey, Shane, I really appreciate you coming out here, and thank you so much for making sure that all our frontlines workers are staffed and helping this country and the world of what we need right now.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks. So glad to be here.
Thanks, man. Hey, guys, thanks for tuning into the episode. If you guys enjoyed it, show some love, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe. Also, make sure you check out our exclusive CLevel group on Facebook.